And in an earlier module, it was mentioned that the general mental or cognitive abilities contribute to the kind of person one is and one can be. According to Charles Spearman, he believed that intelligence consists of a general mental ability, or IQ, or intelligence quotient, also called as the G factor, and domain-specific abilities. IQ is a standardized measure that represents a person's reasoning skills. It has been accepted in the psychological community that intelligence is not necessarily a single and generalized characteristic, but is comprised of different specific traits. Thus, researchers have attempted to identify and measure further and different components of intelligence. One of the most famous works in this field is Howard Gardner's theory of intelligence. Gardner's theory asserts that each person possesses a certain specific intelligence where he or she is most probably good or skilled at. So here are the 8 intelligences. The first one is verbal or linguistic intelligence. It is characterized by the ability to think in words and use language to explore meaning. Usually, people with this kind of intelligence have occupation as authors, journalists, speakers, or poets. Next is the logical mathematical intelligence. It refers to the ability to carry out mathematical operations, the ability to handle long chains of reasoning, and the sensitivity and capacity to discern logical or numerical patterns. Most people with this skill become scientists, engineers, accountants, or mathematicians. Third is the spatial or visual intelligence. It implies the ability to think in image, pictures, or three-dimensional figures, as well as the capacity to perceive the visual spatial world accurately and perform transformation on one's initial perceptions. People with this skill often work as architects, artists, sailors, or navigators, or sculptors. Fourth is bodily kinesthetic intelligence. It is the ability to be physically adept at manipulating objects, controlling one's bodily movements, and handling objects skillfully. Most people with this type of intelligence include surgeons, craftspeople, artisans, dancers, and athletes. Fifth is the musical rhythmic intelligence. It refers to the sensitivity to pitch, melody, rhythm, and tone. The ability to produce and appreciate rhythm, pitch, and timbre, and the appreciation of the forms of musical expressiveness. People with musical intelligence usually end up as composers, musicians, or sensitive listeners. Sixth is the interpersonal intelligence. It refers to the ability to understand and interact effectively with others, as well as the capacity to discern and respond appropriately to the moods, temperaments, motivation, and desires of other peoples. With this type of intelligence, these people often work as teachers or mental health professionals. Intrapersonal intelligence. It is characterized by the ability to understand oneself, the knowledge of one's own strengths, weakness, desires, and intelligence, as well as the understanding of one's own feelings, and the ability to discriminate among them and draw upon them to guide behavior. People with this intelligence eventually become theologians, psychologists, or persons with detailed and accurate self-concept. 8 is naturalist intelligence. It described as an ability to observe patterns in nature and understand natural and human-made system, sensitivity to the difference among diverse species, and ability to interact subtly with living creatures. Most often, people with naturalist intelligence work as farmers, botanists, ecologists, landscapers, and environmentalists.
So next is contributors to intelligence. we have two factors in contributors to intelligence and personality. First is heredity and second is environment. First is heredity refers to the genes one inherits from his or her parents which provide the upper and lower limits of his or her intelligence quotient. This is the raw biological materials of intelligence. So, ang heredity is one of the role of heredity is to ourselves is it allows individuals to appreciate both their inherent characteristics and the impact of their environment. It fosters self-awareness and can provide insights into personal strengths, challenges, the potential areas for growth. For example of heredity is those students that are still making decisions in their lives or career depending on what the parents want for them. Kanang every time na may decision kang gagawin, then you always think how your parents react on that situations or that that decisions. May isip mo talaga na what if wrong decision pala yun, then baka pagalitan ka ng parents mo, why did you do that wrong decision? In order to grow, we should have our own decision in our lives. I'm not telling naman na hindi na natin pakinggan yung decision ng parents natin, but not all the time kasi nakasama natin yung parents natin. We have to train ourselves in making decisions without them. And the other one is environment. Environment involves the experiences and the psychological and physical exposure of the individual to the various influences around him or her. The home, school, and community as well as the things happen therein an examples of one's environment. So, ang environments is in the context of understanding the self, the environment encompasses all external factors that influence an individual's development, experiences, and identity. This includes physical surroundings, cultural influence, social interactions, and life experiences. The environments plays important role in shaping various aspects of an individual's personality and self-perspective. So, ang environment naman is, for example, those students na na-influensyan siya ng his or her school by his friends or teachers, etc. Halimbawa, you're making decision with your friends kung saan mo gusto kumain, then sabi mo gusto mo sa Jollibee, then your friends says that they want to eat on the only rice, then in order to have a decisions, you have to adjust for them. Kung only rice, then you have to make a decision kung makikisama ka or kakain ka, then ikaw na mag-adjust for them.
So what is motivation? Motivation is a force that moves people to behave, think, and feel the same way they do. Motivated behavior is energized, directed, and sustained, according to Jerrig and Zimbrado 2002. It may be said that aside from the heredity and environment, motivation is also significant influence in personality development. The psychologists approach the concept of motivation by putting forward theories that seeks to explain the levels of motivations of individuals, some of which are as follows. First is the evolutionary theory. Second, drive reduction theory. Third, optimum arousal theory. And fourth, cognitive approach. So let's start with evolutionary theory. According to this theory, the motivated for sex, achievement, aggression, and other behaviors is rooted in the organism's evolutionary past. by Bust 2000. Thus, if a species is highly competitive, it is because such competitiveness has improved its chances of survival, and it is then passed down through genes of generation to generation. Next is the drive reduction theory. This theory explains that organisms are driven by psychological needs. A need energizes one's drive to eliminate or reduce the deprivation. For example, if one feels hungry, hunger is the motivator for him or her to look for food and eat it to reduce the drive and satisfy the need. This theory stresses the idea that as drive becomes stronger, the individual becomes more motivated to reduce it. However, people tend to behave in ways that increase rather than reduce the drive. Thus, this theory did not hold much for a comprehensive framework. Next is the optimum arousal theory. The Yerkes-Dodson law states that performance is at its highest under condition of moderate arousal rather than high or low arousal. With a low arousal, one might be too lazy or unwilling to perform the task, and with high arousal, one might not be able to concentrate on performing the task. For example, when taking an exam with a very high arousal, a student may not be able to concentrate. On the other hand, if the arousal is too low, he or she may not work fast enough to finish the test. Thus, moderate arousal is often the best in dealing with the task. At times, the level of arousal may also depend on what kind of task on hand. For example, in solving a mathematical problem, a lower level of arousal is preferred because one spends more time in solving it, even if the process takes longer. In contrast, a task to push a button exactly at a specific time requires a high level of arousal. The personal characteristics of an individual may also influence the level of motivation. Some individuals seek stimulation in their lives and enjoy the thrill of engaging in risky behaviors, sensation seeking, and in motivation to experience varied, novel, complex, and intense feelings and experiences. The characteristics of high sensation seekers more than low sensation seekers, as found by Zuckerman 1972, includes the following. First, motivated to engage in sports like mountain climbing, parachuting, hand gliding, scuba diving, car and motorcycle racing, and downhill skiing. Second, attracted to vacation or occupation including exciting experience like firefighting, emergency room work, or air traffic control. Desk jobs are dissatisfying to them. Third is drink heavily, smoke, or use illicit drugs. Fourth is have a short-term hedonistic attitude towards intimate relationships. The last one is the cognitive approach. The contemporary view of motivation emphasizes that cognitive factors determine motivation level. An example is a student motivation to do well in class. One's confidence in his or her ability to do well and expectations for success may help the person relax, concentrate, and study better. Thinking too much about not performing in class and the fear of failure may lead to anxiety and consequently not performing well. One's conscious effort, the ability to control his or her behavior, like setting a study plan or avoiding going to parties, will improve performance, as well as the ability to use the information processing abilities of attention, memory, and problem solving. There are two aspects of cognitive approach to motivation. The first one is the intrinsic, refers to internal factors like self-determination, curiosity, challenge, and effort. The second is extrinsic, involves outside factors such as rewards and punishment. As such, some students study hard because they are internally motivated to exert a considerable amount of effort and achieve a high quality of work. Other students study hard because they want to have a good grades or avoid parental disapproval. Some psychologists contend that many successful individuals are both intrinsically and extrinsically motivated. Individuals have a choice to be highly motivated, especially when it comes to school performance. Select which sources will you help sustain and maintain your motivational level. Likewise, you should be able to enjoy the activities that you do, but avoid engaging in risky behaviors like taking illegal drugs, drinking liquor, or smoking.
So next is emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence, measured by emotional quotient or EQ, is the type of intelligence that refers to the abilities to perceive, appraise, understand, and express emotions accurately and appropriately. The use of emotions and emotional knowledge to facilitate thinking and the regulation of one's emotions to promote both emotional and intellectual growth. EQ is the emotional counterpart of IQ. For example, one of the more examples of EQ is emotional intelligence are showing respect to others, showing appreciations, pag-uunawa sa kaibigan na may pinagdadaanan, then so on, etc. From the aforementioned definition, it may be noted that emotional intelligence has an intellectual component, especially in using emotions to facilitate thinking or logical reasoning. As an example, consider the following scenarios. In a class, the teachers asked the question, in which geographical region is the Philippines located? Paul sees Jane raising her hand, but he blurts out, Southeast Asia. One will already think that Jane might be angry because Paul gets the credit. It may thus be said that Paul has a IQ but a lower IQ. So in this scenario, si Paul is he has a high IQ kasi sinabi na niya yung answer para hindi maunahan ni Jen. But it has a low IQ because hindi niya inisip na nauna si Jen magtaas ng kamay, but instead of raising his hand, then sinabi na niya yung answer nang hindi pa natawag ng teacher kung sino ang magsagot or sino ang magtaas ng kamay. It shows that Paul disrespect Jane and Paul didn't realize that will happen.
Good day everyone! So the last topic for this video is about reasoning, which I will discuss with you. But before that, do you believe that every day we make decisions? Well, if you answer yes, then you're correct. Usually, we make simple decisions every day just like, papasok ba ako today? Kakain ba ako ng agahan? Magkating classes kaya ako today? And so on. There are times na gumagawa rin tayo ng may hirap na desisyon. Like, before enrollment, we did a lot of thinking kung anong course kukunin natin. Pero mahirap man o madali o simpleng desisyon, we should still always choose the best. The best means kung ano yung tama, kung ano yung nakabubuti para sa iyo at sa lahat. In making a decision, we should select the best among our options, which will give the best consequences. Now, in choosing the best decision, dyan papasok sa reasoning. So what is reasoning? Reasoning, an intellectual skill, is one way to determine if a choice is the best from among several options. It is a mental process that involves using and applying knowledge to solve problems, make plans or decisions, and achieve one's goals. Using and applying knowledge. Just like in our example, our knowledge about cutting classes is that it was never a good thing. Now, when we make a decision if magka-cutting classes tayo or not, isipin natin yung possible consequences pag magka-cutting classes tayo and kapag hindi. Everything we choose, We do or make ay may consequences talaga. Pwedeng good, pwede ring bad. Pag magkakating classes ka, there are a lot of possible consequences. Most are not good. Maybe nag-enjoy ka sa kung saan man kayo nagpunta, but the aftermath will always be not good. Mapapagalitan ka ng parents mo, wala kang points for attendance, and a lot more. Swerte mo na lang if walang pa-quiz ang mga proof. Now, if hindi ka naman magkakating classes, marami ring possible consequences. Halos magandang consequences naman. Cutting classes, panandali ang saya, while if you stay at school and study hard, magiging masaya pa parents mo kasi nag-aaral ka ng mabuti. Matutuwa ang teachers mo kasi present ka, and ikaw din matutuwa kapag nakapasa ka. So, between the two choices, the best choice is hindi mag-cutting classes and mag-aral ng mabuti. Now, there are two types of reasoning, the deductive and inductive reasoning. First is deductive. Nandito yung premises and conclusion. Deductive reasoning moves from general premises to specific conclusion. And if the premises are true, then the conclusion must also be true. Deductive reasoning cannot really increase human knowledge since the conclusions yielded by deductive reasoning are statements that are necessarily true given the premises. We should always remember that in deductive argument, we are focused on the reasoning and not on the truth. Next is inductive reasoning. While deductive reasoning moves from general to specific, kabaliktaran naman ang inductive reasoning. It draws conclusion by going from the specific to the general. Inductive reasoning begins with observations that are specific and limited in scope and proceeds to a generalized conclusion that is likely but not certain in light of accumulated evidence. Inductive reasoning cannot yield an absolutely certain conclusion since the conclusions reached by the inductive method are not logical necessities. No amount of inductive evidence guarantees the conclusion. This is because there is no way to know all the possible evidence has been gathered and that there exists no further bit of unobserved evidence that might invalidate the hypothesis. So what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is a statement that must be tested by gathering data. It is an expectation of what is going to happen. The data will confirm or negate the hypothesis or expectation. To further understand deductive and inductive reasoning, I have examples here. First is deductive reasoning. For example, if x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 2, then x plus y is equal to 3. In this example, it is a logical necessity that x plus y is equal to 3, so x plus y must be equal to 3. Logical necessity means yun na yun siya, wala nang alternative. Hindi naman pwede na ang given is x equals 1 and y equals 2 tapos x plus y is equal to 4. Also, this example is valid since both premises are correct and the conclusion is also correct given the premises. Next example for deductive reasoning. So the premises are, there is no such thing as drought in Southeast Asia. Philippines is located in Southeast Asia. And the conclusion is, Philippines never need to make plans on how to deal with drought. This example is also valid. How so? As I've said earlier, in deductive reasoning, we are focused on the reasoning and not on the truth. Even if one of the premises is false, as long as the conclusion is correct given the premises, then the argument will still be considered as valid. Last example for deductive reasoning. So the premises are, Southeast Asia experiences drought. Philippines is located in Southeast Asia. And the conclusion, Philippines never need to make plans on how to deal with drought. Now this example is invalid because the conclusion did not coincide with the premises. It is considered invalid deductive reasoning if the premises are true but the conclusion is false. Next is inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning draws conclusion by going from the specific observation to general conclusion. First example, specific observation, Nala is an orange cat and she purrs loudly. Pattern recognition, every orange cat I've met purrs loudly. And general conclusion, all orange cat purrs loudly. Next example, Specific observation, baby Jack said his first word at the age of 12 months. Pattern recognition, all observed babies say their first word at the age of 12 months. And general conclusion, all babies say their first word at the age of 12 months. As I've said earlier, conclusions reached by the inductive method are not logical necessities. No amount of inductive evidence guarantees the conclusion. This is because there is no way to know that all the possible evidence has been gathered and that there exists no further bit of unobserved evidence that might invalidate the hypothesis. Inductive reasoning cannot yield an absolutely certain conclusion, but it can actually increase human knowledge. It can also make predictions about future events or as yet unobserved phenomena. The conclusion that all orange cats purrs loudly and all babies say their first word at the age of 12 months are not absolutely certain, unless all orange cats and babies in this world is observed. And it would be an unending observation since there are still orange cats and babies to be born into this world. Biased reasoning. Biased reasoning refers to the act of jumping to conclusion before even knowing all the facts. Biased reasoning usually leads to misunderstanding. So before we conclude, alamin muna natin lahat. And lastly, confirmation bias. It is a tendency to look for information that supports one's decisions and beliefs while ignoring disconfirming information. Example nito ay mga tao na feeling perfect at alam ang lahat. They are close-minded na kung ano yung alam nila, para sa kanila yun na yung totoo. And if someone disagree, maghahanap sila ng kakampi which will agree with their point. This behavior is not good. We should always be open-minded. And that concludes our report. Thank you for listening and Merry Christmas.